The 50-thing prepare and janitor is one of thousands of human beings critics say include been constrained of his homes in the history 2 weeks as portion of a driving by the public by the government to close downward which it claims is dangerous and crowded habitation. Now homelessness, she's marketing all her belongings and preparation to back to her countryside, hundreds of miles off in Henan Provincial in center China. Ours flat was demolished and new habitation is too costly to provide. We're not manufacturing quite cash, she says, in her shoes, hobby, pans, pots, a area radiator and toolkit distribution out in front line of her on a fabric on the road. I include no selection but to-go household. I mind I could do more than cash in Beijing rather than buy agriculture at household. But currently, he's period to-go household. Both of housing and business properties, factories and warehouses, include been destined for drift, and by the government has acted in stunning rate. Zhao says residents in her house of few half a dozen little apartments were taking into account fare above a date's note to go of. A little precautionary was located at the valve on November 25, read, tenants, happy pure out up November 26, 2017, at 5 p.m. or where will be ensuing consequences. As promoted, by the government officials showed up the following date, she says, owning sledgehammers. Doors were stretched off hinges. Ceilings were break downward. The force was close away. Same drift team was Barbarian, told the house's homeowner, who requested to be identified just by his name, Yang. Same window shards of the drift of the ceilings bring down on a infant and wound its arm while a household was driving of. My cardiac sank while I heard the infant scream, Yang told. Nobody who hadn't purified out by the tightly last date had his stuff each ruined or thrown in the road. The house was done uninhabited in a question of several hours, coercion human beings of his homes in Beijing's chilly winter temperature. Severe critics include charged by the government of with the daxing flame, that ruined out in the cellar of a housing and manufacture house, as an pretext to gear a length-standing headache for by the government, Beijing's enormous and increasing people. In a uncommon go, more than rather than 100 visible China creative intelligentsia distributed an outdoor email on the internet, critical the constrained evictions. The team says how hundreds of thousands of migrants could be struck by the crackdown. Beijing is household to 3 millionth migrants. In our type, the is a perverse occurrence how crushed the law and tramples on humane rights and should be decisively stopped and rectified, the team wrote. The simplest way to encounter such goals, critics tell, is by targeting the poorest of the impoverished, immigrant workers in slight cash and anywhere else to go, besides behind to the village poverty reduction of his household provinces. The public by the government has rejected how the evictions are targeting immigrant workers, or how they are portion of the broad schedule to bring Beijing's people. Beijing Communistic Side head Cai Chi has told how continuing security checks should be humane-centered, and the regional by the government has detained job fairs for such someone ve lose his jobs wherever factories and warehouses include been closed downward. The Beijing by the government told how more than rather than 1,800 jobs had been proposed to such moved, yet, how waterfall far brief of the full quantity of human beings who include been evicted, onto critics. The by the government says he's as well offer aid for such workers who desire to keep Beijing and back to his hometown, and house-sponsored rent habitation, although it gave few detailed information on such plans. The Beijing Job Security Committee how initiate the cleaning driving didn't answer to a query for commentary. Cheap late in several of the at first by the government documents on the as-called cleaning, officials called to targeting areas in a cheap end people. The period sparked clearance amongst public print users, several of whom are now with it as an disrespectful sign of honor. Yet, in answer to the increasing indignation, China's web censor car ramped up. Posts consisting the keywords cheap end people include been censored on public networks WeChat and Weibo, and the Beijing by the government has rejected with the period and appears to include stopped with it in social documents. Medium-grade affection. The evictions seem to include awoken several members of China's always expanding medium grade to the distress of the ordinary immigrant employee, the human beings who not just helping construct Beijing, but do certainly how its day-to-day as necessary are welcomed. Several complain about on enlarged intermittent in-pack and meal supply services. Several 90% of Beijing's famous supply drivers, who swim the town on scooters, are immigrant workers. On to Zhao Xiaoman, an analysis in Guangzhou advising. Miao Ringing, 23, a white-collar employee at an car business in Beijing, told how on the internet vendors had rejected to vessel her orders to Beijing except she pay dual for price supply. She as well told she'd noted less tuk-tuk drivers and a little grocery keep in her neighborhood was closed downward. Same town is not habitable over if it continues. Located elsewhere. Customer, grumble on the supply disruptions. Li, who has belonging a little equipment keep in southward Beijing for 13 years, told the Daxing Flame is obviously an pretext to strength out human beings love him. Same by the government welcomed immigrant workers to go and promote to house the town 10 years ago. But now they wish us to keep while they don't requirement us over, told Li human beings are leftward no freedom of action at all. Why are they in such a race?